Every project has that one job you've been putting off. You know it needs doing, but you're hoping that when you finally get to it, it won't be as bad as you've imagined. For us, that job was hiding underneath the cabin floor, and with the possibility of even jeopardising the safety of the crew. So stay with us and see how we go about solving this problem later in the episode. But before we got there, we still had plenty of jobs to finish to get Victoria one step closer to becoming the boat that we dreamed of. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Boatyard Tales. If you're new to the channel, I'm Tom, and this is my son Craig. And this is our Aquastar 27 Victoria. When we bought her, we thought we'd have her back on the water in no time. Instead, she's taken us on one of the biggest projects we've ever tackled. In the past, we'd often had loose cables across the decks of the boat while working and using power tools. We decided we were going to fit shore power. We threaded the power cable underneath the gunnels of the boat, and where it met up with the waterproof electrical connection that we'd fitted on the bulkhead. And once inside the helm cabin, we'd fitted a consumer unit, complete with RCD breakers, and it was split off two ways. The first area was the cupboard next to all of the helm wiring, where we put a single socket and we connected a 4-gang strip in order to be able to work the kettle. And the second area was on the port side, where we put a single socket, and this was in order to fit a 2-battery trickle charger. We had also fitted a diesel heater, which was occasionally getting knocked on inadvertently. This was a video from a neighbour who came in to help, and he didn't know what he'd done, so he had to send us the video. And what had actually happened was, he'd knocked a toggle switch. So to solve the problem, we got a toggle switch cover, which is often known as a missile cover. Or missile switch cover, I should say. And we fitted that, and the problem was solved. And just to give it a bit of added security, we put a little panel in place and fitted it with magnets, so the problem couldn't happen again. And also, taking off the boxes of jobs that were had in line, next one was tappets.
Right in the mouth, not even tapping. Said all the tappets go. Lovely that. Love sits in that board, man. It sounds lovely. I'll put his throttle back on again because I took it off. There's no wrong with that. Plenty of oil getting to the push rods and everything.
And at the same time, this was sucked up into the raw filter. I'd certainly like to know some of the strange finds you guys have had. We'd always had a slight split in our rocker cover, and the lad that came to fit the tappets had a spare one, so we brought that with him. And after a good clean-up and a spray, it certainly looked the part. We had some switch panels fitted as well for all of the auxiliaries we'd planned. And a good pal John done the wiring for us. Always does a really good, neat job. He's a bit of a perfectionist really when it comes to wires and things like that, thank goodness. And always leaves us a good plan of where everything is or can go, which is always handy for future reference. So bit by bit we started introducing various instruments, from chart plotters to fish finders to radio upgrades. We've still got a long way to go to catch up with our pal Mark Skinner, who's got more gear than this space shuttle. When out at sea, we'd often had a problem with spray hitting the window, to the point where people had actually gone out with a cloth and wiped the window down a bit. But this time, we were going to take care of that by fitting a wiper. And you can actually, when setting it up, adjust the sweep and the parking areas. Well, we were flying through the jobs now, and one of the jobs we'd wanted to do was fit an exhaust alarm, an audible alarm which is fitted to the wet exhaust system. Located about 6 inches away from the exhaust elbow, it lets you know when water stops coming through to cool the exhaust system and sets off an audible alarm. And you can adjust the various temperatures that suit your boat. Well, I've often thought we should rename the Victoria Yo-Yo for the amount of time she goes up and down in that hoist in the boatyard. But this time should come out for a good reason. A really quick job this time, fingers crossed. The plan was to fit mounts on which to fit the transducers. We were going to put some blocks of wood and Sikaflex them to the hull of the boat. Then we'd be covering them with chopped strand, fiberglass and resin to hold them into place. Once that was done, we coated it with anti-foul and screwed the transducers into place, which meant no holes had to be drilled into the hull of the boat. And at that, it was time to head back into the water. Quite a quick turnaround for us, for a change. and the Victoria was back to her berth. A couple of days later, we decided to have a little run up the river. And you hit some nice scenery on the way up to the Tyne Bridge. And I enjoyed a nice calm spell at the helm on the way up as well. We arrived with the bridges in the distance. In view there was the iconic Tyne Bridge, but before that was the Gateshead Millennium Bridge. It's sometimes known as the Blinking Eye. And we hit on at a terrific time. Alongside us was a Navy frigate, and they were going to open the bridge in order to let the frigate through. The Millennium Bridge does tilt 4 times a week at midday between the months of May and September for the public, and amazingly costs less than £5 in energy costs for each tilt. And it was at that point we decided to go through the bridge ourselves. We'd gone under the bridge many a time, but never when it was open fully, so quite a novelty for us. We moored the Victoria by the quayside wall, while Mickey and Craig had gone up the top for their customary Greg's sausage roll. We then headed back to the marina to berth up, dreading the next job in store. That day had arrived. We were going to tackle the fuel tank, and we didn't know what to expect inside. Once the top was off, we were met by a lot of gunge and rust. But I suppose for a 40-year-old tank, it's what you'd expect. And after using a wet and dry hoover, stand away from in the wind. There was 20 quid note on me. And with that much dirt and grit slopping around in the bottom of the tank, the last thing we wanted to do was to take family and crew out to sea when there was going to be the possibility of a breakdown. And we couldn't see what was hiding behind the baffles. So that was it. The tank was coming out. Something we hadn't thought of at that time, and I would like to know anybody's views who've done this or have an opinion upon it. What would you do about the ballast after removing such a heavy tank and replacing it with a plastic lightweight one? But back to the job in hand. We had cleaned and painted the bilge, and the tank was now dropped into place. We had built a small wooden frame that fitted just nicely to avoid any rocking or movement of the tank. The tank then requires a hole to be cut into it in order to fit the pipes and the fuel sender. And you can buy the sender in various lengths in order to suit the depth of your tank. And when ordering 4 meters of continuous filler hose, somebody obviously hadn't read the notes. The correct hose eventually arrived and was fitted to the filler tank. The fuel gauge was wired up, The fuel was put into the tank, and the fuel supplement to prevent diesel bug was also put in. The full tank, what could go wrong? We hadn't a clue in this photograph what mountainous task we had before us. A job that would banked on approximately £250 was going to turn into excess of £15,000. Should we just have cut our losses and walked away? What would you have done?
Alright.
Okay, stand away from me.
Hello.
Over the edge of the boat.
Thanks for watching and hope to catch you next time round. Bye for now.